I stood in the reception hall of the Riverside Grand Estate, watching my granddaughter's wedding from the parking lot through the tall windows. I wasn't supposed to be anywhere near this place. My daughter had made that abundantly clear. But what she didn't know was that I owned this venue. And what I was about to do would change everything. My name is Helen Morrison, I'm 73 years old. And this is the story of how I went from being dismissed as an embarrassment to my family, to taking back my power in the most unexpected way possible. Let me take you back to where this all started. I've always been close to my granddaughter Emma. From the moment she was born 26 years ago, I was there. I held her when she was minutes old. I changed her diapers when my daughter Jennifer was too exhausted to move. I walked her to her first day of kindergarten. For years, Emma and I were inseparable. Every weekend, she'd come to my house and we'd bake cookies, work in the garden, or just sit on the porch and talk about life. Jennifer, my daughter, was never the warmest person. Even as a child, she was calculating, always concerned with appearances, with what the neighbors thought, with climbing the social ladder. I'd raised her as a single mother after my husband died when she was just 8 years old. I worked 2 jobs to put her through private school, to give her piano lessons, to make sure she had everything she needed to succeed. And succeed she did. She married Richard, a successful investment banker, moved into a beautiful home in the most prestigious neighborhood in town, and had 2 children, Emma and her younger brother, Ethan. But somewhere along the way, Jennifer became ashamed of me. It started small. She'd suggest I wear something different when coming to her house for dinner. She'd correct my grammar in front of her friends. She'd change the subject when I told stories about my working-class upbringing. Over the years it got worse. The invitations became less frequent. The phone calls shorter. The distance wider. Still I had Emma. Sweet, kind Emma who never forgot her grandmother. Even as she grew up and went to college, she'd call me every week. She'd visit during holidays. She'd bring her friends around to meet me, telling them proudly, "This is my grandma, the strongest woman I know." 3 years ago, I made a decision that would eventually lead to this moment. I'd been working as a property manager for most of my adult life, and I'd saved every penny I could. I invested carefully, lived frugally, and over the decades, I'd built up a decent nest egg. When the Riverside Grand Estate went up for sale, a beautiful historic venue that had hosted countless weddings and events, I saw an opportunity. The asking price was reasonable because the place needed work, but I saw its potential. I bought it, renovated it carefully, and within 2 years, it had become one of the most sought-after wedding venues in the state. I didn't advertise my ownership widely. I hired a competent management team to handle the day-to-day operations, and most people knew the manager, David, as the face of the venue. I preferred it that way. I'd spent my whole life working behind the scenes and I was comfortable there. Emma got engaged last year to a wonderful young man named Michael. I was thrilled for her. She came to my small house on the outskirts of town, practically bouncing with excitement, showing me the ring, talking about her dreams for the wedding. We spent that whole afternoon looking at wedding magazines, discussing flowers and colors, and whether they should have a band or a DJ. "Grandma," she said at one point, her eyes shining, "I want you right there in the front row. You're one of the most important people in my life." I hugged her tight, tears in my eyes. "I wouldn't miss it for the world, sweetheart." Over the following months, Emma would call me with updates. She'd found the perfect dress. Michael's family was lovely. They'd chosen the Riverside Grand Estate as their venue. Wasn't it beautiful? I smiled when she told me that, but I didn't say anything about my ownership. It felt nice to know my granddaughter would be married in a place I'd created. Everything seemed perfect. Until 6 weeks ago. Emma stopped calling. First, I didn't think much of it. Planning a wedding is stressful, and I figured she was just busy. But when I called her, she sounded distant, uncomfortable. Our conversations became awkward and brief. Something was wrong, but she wouldn't tell me what. For weeks before the wedding, I received a call from Jennifer. I should have known then that something was off. She rarely called me. "Mother," she said, her voice crisp and businesslike, "we need to talk about Emma's wedding." "Of course," I said, excited. "I've been working on a quilt as a gift. I'm using fabric from—" "That's actually what I need to discuss with you," Jennifer interrupted. "The wedding is going to be a very sophisticated affair. Richard's business partners will be there. Some very important people from Michael's family. It's crucial that everything go perfectly. I felt a cold sensation in my stomach. What are you saying, Jennifer? There was a pause. Then, in that same cool, businesslike tone, we think it would be best if you didn't attend the wedding. The words hit me like a physical blow. For a moment I couldn't speak. What? Please don't make this harder than it has to be, Jennifer said with a sigh. You know how you can be. You tell those long, rambling stories. Your clothes are always so dated. Last time you were at our house, you kept talking about your bunions in front of Richard's boss. It was mortifying. Jennifer, this is Emma's wedding. Your daughter. My granddaughter. And that's exactly why everything needs to be perfect. Emma agrees with me on this. I don't believe you. Let me talk to her. She's busy with wedding preparations. Mother, please. We're not trying to hurt you. We're just being practical. We'll have a nice dinner with you after the honeymoon. Just the family. Won't that be nice? I was shaking now, anger and hurt coursing through me. Does Emma know about this call? Of course she does. We discussed it as a family. Even Ethan agrees it's for the best. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for over an hour, staring at the wall. My own daughter had just uninvited me from my granddaughter's wedding because she was embarrassed by me. Because I wasn't sophisticated enough. Because I might tell the wrong story or wear the wrong dress. I tried calling Emma 15 times over the next 3 days. She didn't answer. I left voicemails that went unreturned. Finally, I drove to Jennifer's house. Jennifer answered the door. Her face carefully composed into an expression of patient tolerance. Mother, I told you. Emma is very busy, and you showing up like this is exactly the kind of behavior that I want to hear it from Emma, I said firmly. If she tells me herself that she doesn't want me at her wedding, I'll accept it. Jennifer's jaw tightened. Fine. Wait here. She left me standing on the doorstep. Didn't even invite me into the house where I'd spent countless hours babysitting, cooking meals, being a grandmother. After 10 minutes, Emma finally appeared. My sweet Emma, but she couldn't meet my eyes. Grandma, she said softly, I'm sorry. Do you not want me at your wedding, Emma? Tell me the truth. Her eyes filled with tears. It's complicated. Mom thinks. I didn't ask what your mother thinks. I asked what you think. Emma looked back over her shoulder, then lowered her voice. Mom says you might say something embarrassing. That you don't know how to act around Michael's family. They're very proper. And Mom has done so much for this wedding, paid for so much, and she says if you come she won't. She's threatening to pull funding if you invite me. I finished for her. Emma's silence was answer enough. I felt something break inside my chest. I see. Well, I wouldn't want to embarrass anyone. Grandma, please don't be like that. Be like what, Emma? Hurt that my granddaughter is choosing her mother's money over my presents? How should I be? After the wedding we'll have a nice dinner. Yes, your mother mentioned that. As if that makes up for missing one of the most important days of your life. I stepped back from the door. I hope you have a beautiful wedding, Emma. I truly do. I walked back to my car, my vision blurred with tears. Emma called after me, but I didn't turn around. If I had, I might have broken down completely. For days, I was in a fog of grief. I'd lost my husband 40 years ago, raised my daughter alone, worked myself to the bone to give her opportunities, and this was how I was repaid. Excluded. Dismissed. Treated like an embarrassment. I looked at the wedding invitation that had arrived weeks earlier, before Jennifer's call. It sat on my mantelpiece mocking me. Jennifer and Richard Morrison, along with Helen Morrison, invite you to celebrate the marriage of Emma Morrison to Michael Chun at the Riverside Grand Estate. My name was on the invitation. My venue was hosting the wedding. But I wasn't welcome. That's when something shifted inside me. The hurt began to transform into something else. Not anger exactly, but a clear, cold determination. I'd spent my whole life being quiet, being grateful for scraps of attention from my daughter, accepting her condescension because I didn't want to cause waves. But this was too far. I called David, the manager of Riverside Grand Estate. David, the Morrison wedding coming up in 3 weeks. I need you to send me all the contracts and correspondence. Is there a problem, Mrs. Morrison? He asked, concerned. Just send them, please. That evening, I spread the paperwork across my dining room table. The contract was signed by Jennifer Morrison. She'd paid a substantial deposit, with the remaining balance due 1 week before the wedding. The venue rental included the main ballroom, the gardens, tables, chairs, basic lighting, and access to our preferred vendor list. The contract also included our standard cancellation policy. Cancellations made less than 30 days before the event resulted in forfeiture of the deposit. I read through every clause carefully. Then I read through them again. The contract specified that the venue would be available for the Morrison wedding on the specified date, subject to all terms and conditions being met, including full payment and adherence to venue policies. There was nothing in the contract that required my absence as the owner. In fact, the venue policies specifically stated that the management reserved the right to have ownership or management present during events to ensure quality standards. An idea began to form. A bold, probably crazy idea. But the more I thought about it, the more right it felt. If my family was ashamed of me, if they thought I was too embarrassing to attend my own granddaughter's wedding, maybe it was time they learned exactly who I was. Maybe it was time for me to stop being quiet and invisible. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I didn't tell anyone what I was planning. Not my friends, not my neighbors, no one. I went to an upscale salon and had my hair done properly, styled in an elegant updo. I bought a new dress, something sophisticated and expensive, in a deep sapphire blue that complemented my silver hair. I got my nails manicured. I even bought new shoes, comfortable but stylish. More importantly, I worked with David on the wedding preparations. I reviewed every detail of Emma's wedding setup. The flowers, the table arrangements, the lighting, the timeline for the evening. I wanted everything to be perfect. Whatever else happened, Emma deserved a beautiful wedding. 3 days before the wedding, Jennifer called the venue to confirm final details. David transferred the call to me, though Jennifer didn't know who she was speaking to. "This is Helen Morrison, owner of Riverside Grand Estate," I said. "I understand you have some final questions about your daughter's wedding?" There was a sharp intake of breath. "Mother? You own the venue?" "Yes, Jennifer. I've owned it for 3 years now. Did you not know?" How could you afford?" I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. "By working hard and investing wisely. The same way I afforded to put you through private school and college. But that's not important right now. You had questions about the wedding." That is, we don't want you at the wedding. I made that clear. "Oh, I remember. I'm too embarrassing, too unsophisticated. I might tell the wrong stories or wear the wrong clothes. But here's the thing, Jennifer. This is my venue. And according to the contract you signed, the management, that's me, reserves the right to be present during events to ensure quality standards. You can't do this." "Actually, I can. But let me be clear about something. I'm not doing this to ruin Emma's wedding. I'm doing this because I'm tired of being treated as if I don't matter. I'm tired of being hidden away like some shameful secret. So here's what's going to happen. The wedding will proceed exactly as planned. Everything will be beautiful. But I will be there. And you're going to have to decide how you want to handle that. I'll cancel the wedding. I'll move it somewhere else. With 3 days' notice? Good luck. But if you do decide to cancel, you'll forfeit your deposit. That's $15,000. And I imagine finding another comparable venue with 3 days' notice will be challenging, if not impossible." The line was silent for a long moment. Then Jennifer said, her voice shaking with fury, "You're being incredibly selfish." "No, Jennifer. For the first time in a very long time, I'm standing up for myself. There's a difference. The wedding is at 5 o'clock on Saturday. I'll see you then." I hung up before she could respond. The next 2 days were tense. Jennifer tried calling me 7 more times, but I didn't answer. Emma called too, crying, begging me not to ruin her wedding. That call hurt the most. "Emma, sweetheart, I'm not going to ruin anything. The wedding will be beautiful. I've made sure of it. But I deserve to be there. You're putting me in the middle," she sobbed. "Mom is furious. She's saying all kinds of things about you." "What kinds of things?" "That you're vindictive and manipulative. That you're trying to sabotage my happiness because you're bitter." I closed my eyes, feeling the old hurt rise up again. "And what do you think, Emma? Do you really believe I would try to sabotage your happiness?" She was quiet for a moment. "No," she finally whispered. But I don't understand why you're doing this. Because I love you and I deserve to watch you get married. Because I'm not an embarrassment no matter what your mother says. Because I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter. What do you want me to do? Just have a beautiful wedding, sweetheart. That's all I want. Saturday arrived. I woke up early, my stomach churning with nerves and anticipation. Part of me couldn't believe what I was about to do. Part of me felt perfectly calm and centered, more sure of myself than I had been in years. I took my time getting ready. I did my makeup carefully. Not too much, but enough to enhance my features and give me confidence. The new dress fit perfectly, elegant and age-appropriate, but showing that I was a woman who took care of herself. The sapphire blue brought out the color of my eyes. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I looked sophisticated, dignified. Nothing like the frumpy old woman Jennifer seemed to think I was. Before I could lose your nerve, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss how this incredible story unfolds. I arrived at the Riverside Grand Estate at 3 o'clock, 2 hours before the ceremony. David met me at the staff entrance, his eyes widening when he saw me. "Mrs. Morrison, you look absolutely stunning," he said. "Thank you, David. How are the preparations going?" "Everything is perfect. The flowers arrived on time, the catering team is set up, the string quartet is doing their sound check. It's going to be a beautiful event." "And the family?" "The bride and her party are in the bridal suite. Mrs. Jennifer Morrison and her husband are in the library. They've been asking for me repeatedly, but I've been strategically unavailable." I smiled. "Good. Let's keep it that way for now. I want to check on a few things." I spent the next hour moving through the venue, checking details. The tablecloths were crisp and perfectly arranged. The centerpieces, white roses and orchids, were stunning. The garden where the ceremony would take place was immaculate, with white chairs arranged in perfect rows and a beautiful arch draped in flowers and greenery at the front. I approved it all. This was my granddaughter's wedding, and regardless of how Jennifer felt about me, I was going to make sure Emma had the perfect day. At 4:30, guests began arriving. I watched from one of the second-floor windows as they made their way through the gardens to the ceremony site. They were indeed a sophisticated crowd. Expensive suits, designer dresses, the kind of people who summered in the Hamptons and wintered in Aspen. Jennifer's people. At 4:45, I made my way down to the garden. I timed it carefully, late enough that most guests were already seated, but early enough that the ceremony hadn't started. I walked through the garden gate, my head held high, and began making my way toward the front row. The effect was immediate. Heads turned. People began whispering. I saw Jennifer near the front, talking to an elegantly dressed couple, probably Michael's parents. When she saw me, her face went white, then red. She rushed over, grabbing my arm. "What are you doing?" she hissed. "I'm attending my granddaughter's wedding," I said calmly, removing her hand from my arm. "Please don't make a scene, Jennifer. You wouldn't want to embarrass yourself in front of all these important people. You can't be here." We agreed. "No, you decided." "I never agreed to anything. And as I told you, this is my venue. I have every right to be here." Richard appeared at Jennifer's side. "Helen, please. For Emma's sake, don't do this." "Richard, for Emma's sake, I'm doing exactly this. That girl spent half her childhood at my house. I taught her to bake, to garden, to stand up for herself. Do you really think I'm going to miss watching her get married?" "You're being unreasonable," Jennifer said, her voice rising. Several guests were now openly staring. "Jennifer, the ceremony starts in 10 minutes. You have two choices. You can continue making a scene and actually embarrass yourself in front of all these people you're so desperate to impress. Or you can sit down, smile, and watch your daughter get married. What's it going to be?" Jennifer's face was a mask of fury, but she knew I was right. Making a bigger scene would be far worse than my presence. She turned abruptly and walked back to her seat, her spine rigid with anger. I continued to the front row and sat down. Not in the very first seat, that was Emma's mother's place after all, but in the third seat, next to an elderly gentleman who introduced himself as Michael's grandfather. "Beautiful venue," he said kindly. "Thank you," I replied. "I own it." His eyebrows rose with interest. "Really? You've done a wonderful job with it. My grandson couldn't stop talking about how perfect it is." We chatted pleasantly for a few minutes, and I found myself relaxing slightly. At least someone here was treating me like a human being rather than a party crasher. The string quartet began playing, signaling the start of the ceremony. The wedding party began their processional. I watched Ethan, my grandson, walk down the aisle as one of the groomsmen. He saw me and his step faltered, his eyes widening in shock, but he kept walking. The bridesmaids followed, then the maid of honor. Finally, the music swelled into the wedding march. Everyone stood and turned toward the garden gate where Emma appeared on Richard's arm. She was breathtaking. Her dress was simple but elegant, her hair swept up with small white flowers woven through it. But it was her face that made me catch my breath. Radiant with happiness, her eyes scanning the crowd for her groom. Then she saw me. Her eyes met mine, and for a moment, her step faltered just as Ethan's had. I smiled at her, my eyes filling with tears, and mouthed, "You're beautiful." Emma's eyes welled up too, and she gave me a small, trembling smile before continuing down the aisle. The ceremony was lovely. The officiant spoke about love and commitment, about building a life together. Emma and Michael exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promising to support each other, to grow together, to face life's challenges as partners. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife and they kissed, I applauded along with everyone else, tears streaming down my face. My granddaughter was married, and I was there to witness it. No matter what happened next, no one could take that away from me. The cocktail hour was in the garden, while the staff transformed the ballroom for dinner. I stood near one of the flower arrangements, sipping champagne, watching the guests mingle. Several people approached me, introduced by Michael's grandfather as Helen Morrison, the owner of this magnificent estate. I found myself having genuinely interesting conversations. Michael's aunt was an art historian who was fascinated by the historic restoration I'd done on the building. One of Richard's colleagues wanted to know about my investment strategy. A bridesmaid asked for my card because she was getting married next year and loved the venue. I was charming. I was articulate. I told stories about the venue's history, about the restoration process, about the challenges of running a business. I was everything Jennifer claimed I wasn't: sophisticated, well-spoken, engaging. And Jennifer saw all of it. Every time I laughed at someone's joke or answered a question knowledgeably, I could feel her eyes on me, burning with anger and something else. Embarrassment, perhaps. Or the dawning realization that she'd been wrong about me. Emma and Michael were doing their rounds, greeting guests, accepting congratulations. I stayed where I was, not wanting to force a confrontation. But eventually they made their way to me. Emma looked uncertain. Her joy dimmed with anxiety. "Grandma," I pulled her into a hug. "You look absolutely beautiful, sweetheart. And that ceremony was perfect. I'm so happy for you." She hugged me back tightly. "I'm glad you're here," she whispered. "I'm sorry for everything. We'll talk about all that later. Today is about you and Michael." I turned to her new husband. "Michael, welcome to the family. Emma's lucky to have you, and I hope you know you're lucky to have her." Michael, to his credit, smiled warmly and shook my hand. "Mrs. Morrison, it's wonderful to finally meet you properly. Emma talks about you all the time. And thank you for this venue. It's even more beautiful than we imagined." "You're very welcome. I wanted Emma's wedding to be perfect." Michael's grandfather appeared at our side. "Helen, you didn't tell me you were Emma's grandmother. She's a lovely young woman. You must be very proud." "I am. Very proud." Emma looked between us, confusion and something like relief on her face. "You two have been talking?" "Your grandmother and I have been having a delightful conversation," Michael's grandfather said. "She's been telling me about the restoration of this building. Fascinating work. You know, Helen, you should talk to my son," Michael's father. "He's in commercial real estate, and I think he'd be very interested in your expertise." Over the next hour I met more of Michael's family. His parents were gracious and friendly. His younger sister wanted to hear all about Emma's childhood. His cousins were funny and warm. Every single one of them treated me with respect and interest. None of them seemed to think I was an embarrassment. Dinner was announced, and we all moved into the ballroom. I'd carefully arranged with David that I would sit at a table with some of Michael's extended family, not at the family table where Jennifer had undoubtedly not set a place for me. I was fine with that. I made my point by being here. I didn't need to sit next to Jennifer all evening. The ballroom looked spectacular. The lighting was warm and romantic, the table settings elegant, the flowers perfect. As everyone found their seats, I heard guest after guest commenting on how beautiful everything was. Several people asked who had planned the wedding, and Jennifer was quick to take credit. I said nothing. Let her have that. I knew the truth. Dinner was served. A beautifully prepared multi-course meal by the excellent catering team I'd hired to work our events. The food was delicious, the wine flowed freely, and the conversation at my table was lively and engaging. Michael's aunt and uncle were delightful people, well-traveled and full of interesting stories. You know, Michael's aunt said to me during dessert, it's such a shame that you're not seated at the family table. You're Emma's grandmother, aren't you? I am, I said carefully. Then you should be up there. Let me talk to Jennifer. Please don't, I said quickly. It's complicated family dynamics, and I don't want to make waves during Emma's wedding. She looked at me shrewdly. Ah, one of those situations. Well, their loss is our gain. You're wonderful company. After dinner came the speeches. The best man told funny stories about Michael. The maid of honor talked about Emma's kindness and loyalty. Richard gave a short, polished speech about watching his daughter grow up and welcoming Michael to the family. Jennifer spoke about the wedding planning process and how beautiful Emma looked. Neither of them mentioned me. Not once. Then it was time for the father-daughter dance. Richard and Emma took to the floor, swaying to a classic song. Other guests began snapping photos. It was a sweet moment, and I watched with a mixture of emotions. Happiness for Emma, but also a deep ache for all the moments Jennifer had stolen from me. After the father-daughter dance came the mother-son dance with Michael and his mother. Then the DJ invited all the guests to join the bride and groom on the dance floor. I stayed at my table watching. I'm not much of a dancer, and my feet were starting to hurt in the new shoes despite their comfort. But I was content. I'd made it through the ceremony and dinner. I'd proven my point. Soon I could slip away quietly and go home, satisfied that I'd stood up for myself. But then Emma was there, standing beside my chair, her hand extended. Grandma, will you dance with me? I looked up at her, this beautiful young woman in her wedding dress, and my eyes filled with tears. Emma, you don't have to. I want to. Please. I took her hand and let her lead me to the dance floor. The DJ, bless him, must have gotten some signal because he transitioned smoothly into a slower, gentler song. Emma and I began to dance, her hand in mine, her other hand on my shoulder, moving in a simple box step I'd taught her when she was 7 years old. I'm sorry, Grandma, Emma said softly, her voice thick with emotion. I'm so sorry for not fighting for you. For letting Mom make me believe that you being here would somehow ruin everything. Oh, sweetheart. No, let me say this. You raised me in so many ways. You were there for every important moment of my childhood. You taught me to be kind, to work hard, to stand up for myself. And then when it came time for my wedding, I let Mom push you out because I was afraid. Afraid she'd pull her funding. Afraid of confrontation. But you being here tonight, you standing up for yourself even when we all tried to exclude you, that's the grandmother I remember. That's the woman who taught me to have a backbone. I was crying openly now. I just wanted to be here, Emma. I just wanted to watch you get married. And you're here because you made it happen. Because you were strong enough to fight for your place. I should have done that. I should have told Mom that if my grandmother wasn't welcome, then I didn't want the fancy wedding. She pulled back slightly to look at me. Will you forgive me? There's nothing to forgive. You were in an impossible position. There's everything to forgive, and I'm going to spend a long time making it up to you. Starting with this. She raised her voice slightly, still dancing with me but speaking loudly enough that nearby guests could hear. Everyone, this is my grandmother, Helen Morrison. She owns this beautiful venue where Michael and I are getting married. She's also the woman who raised me, who taught me everything important I know about being a good person. And I was an idiot for almost letting this day happen without her here. There was a ripple of applause from the nearby guests. Several people called out congratulations or kind words. I saw Michael approach Jennifer at the family table, saw him say something to her. Jennifer's face was rigid, but Michael was insistent, gesturing toward the dance floor. When the song ended, Emma hugged me tightly. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, sweetheart. Now go dance with your husband. This is your night. She kissed my cheek and went back to Michael, who spun her around the dance floor while guests cheered. I made my way back toward my table, but I was intercepted by Michael's mother. Helen, I just wanted to say thank you for this beautiful venue, and for raising such a wonderful woman. Emma clearly gets her kindness from you. That's very generous of you to say. It's the truth. And I hope you'll join us for brunch tomorrow morning. We're hosting it for close family and friends before we all head home, and you absolutely should be there. Thank you. I'd like that. The reception continued. The cake was cut, the bouquet was tossed, the party continued into the evening. I danced a few more times, once with Ethan, who awkwardly apologized for not standing up for me, and once with Richard, who said stiffly, "Thank you for not making more of a scene than necessary." I just looked at him. Richard, I didn't make a scene. I attended my granddaughter's wedding at my own venue. If anyone made a scene, it was Jennifer when she tried to throw me out. He had nothing to say to that. Jennifer herself didn't speak to me all evening. She avoided me, turning away whenever I came near. Her face set in lines of anger and humiliation. I didn't seek her out. What was there to say? We both knew what had happened here tonight. Around 10 o'clock, as the party was still going strong, I decided it was time to leave. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, and my feet were killing me. I found Emma and Michael to say goodbye. "Leaving already, Grandma?" Emma asked. "It's past my bedtime," I said with a smile. "You young people can party all night. I need my beauty sleep. Thank you for being here. For everything. The venue is perfect, and you being here made it perfect." I kissed her forehead. "Enjoy the rest of your night, Mrs. Chun." She laughed, delighted at hearing her new name. I collected my wrap and purse and made my way out to the parking lot. The night air was cool and refreshing after the warmth of the ballroom. I stood for a moment, looking back at the beautiful old building all lit up, music and laughter spilling out into the night. I'd done it. I'd stood up for myself. I'd refused to be erased and dismissed. And I'd done it with dignity and grace, proving that I was every bit as sophisticated and capable as anyone at that wedding. But I'd also exposed something important. I'd shown Emma who her mother really was. I'd shown Jennifer's friends and colleagues that there was a story here. Family drama beneath the polished surface. And I'd shown myself that I was stronger than I'd believed. "Mrs. Morrison?" I turned to find David approaching from the venue. "Is everything all right?" "Everything is fine, David. Perfect, actually. The wedding is beautiful. Thank you for all your hard work." "It's been my pleasure. But there's something you should know. Mrs. Jennifer Morrison asked to speak with me privately about an hour ago. She tried to get me to ask you to leave." "And what did you say?" David smiled. "I told her that you own the venue, that you have every right to be present, and that you've been nothing but gracious all evening while she's been making demands and complaints. I may have also mentioned that several guests have complimented the venue and asked for our booking information, including Michael's parents who are considering hosting their anniversary party here next year." I had to laugh. "David, remind me to give you a raise." "Already looking forward to it. Drive safe, Mrs. Morrison." I drove home slowly, my mind replaying the evening. When I finally walked into my small house on the outskirts of town, I kicked off the uncomfortable shoes, made myself a cup of tea, and sat in my favorite chair. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Thank you for being there tonight. Thank you for teaching me what it means to stand up for yourself. I love you so much." I texted back. "I love you too, sweetheart. Congratulations again." Another text came through, this one from Ethan. "Grandma, I'm sorry I didn't say anything when Mom told you not to come. That was wrong. You were right to be there. Can I come visit you next week?" "Of course. I'd love to see you." I sat there for a long time sipping my tea, feeling the weight of the evening settling over me. I'd won something tonight, but I'd also lost something. My relationship with Jennifer, already strained, was probably damaged beyond repair. She would see tonight as a betrayal, as me deliberately humiliating her in front of her important friends and colleagues. But I couldn't bring myself to regret it. For too long I'd been quiet and accommodating, accepting whatever scraps of attention Jennifer chose to give me. swallowing my hurt when she treated me as less than. Tonight I'd drawn a line. I'd said, I matter. My presence matters. I deserve to be included in important family moments. And Emma had heard that message. That alone made everything worthwhile. The next morning, I woke up early despite my exhaustion. I dressed carefully again, not as formally as the wedding but nicely, and drove to the hotel where Michael's family was hosting the brunch. Emma met me in the lobby, still glowing with happiness. Grandma, I'm so glad you came. Did you think I wouldn't? Well, Mom said she wasn't coming if you were going to be here, so I wasn't sure if… Jennifer isn't coming? No. She said she has a headache. But honestly, I think she's just embarrassed. Some of her friends were asking about you last night, about how you own the venue, about why you weren't at the family table. She didn't have good answers. We went into the brunch together. Michael's family greeted me warmly, and I spent a lovely couple of hours eating good food and having genuine conversations with people who seemed to actually enjoy my company. Michael's father, true to what his father had said, was very interested in my real estate investments and restoration work. You know, Helen, I have a project coming up that could use your expertise. Would you be interested in consulting? I might be. Tell me more. We talked business for 20 minutes, and by the end of it, we'd exchanged contact information and he'd invited me to come look at the property he was considering purchasing. As I was leaving, Emma walked me to my car. Grandma, Michael and I are going on our honeymoon tomorrow. But when we get back, I want to have dinner. Just you and me. And I want to hear everything. About the venue, about your business, about all the things you've been doing that I didn't know about because I was too caught up in my own life. I'd love that, sweetheart. And Grandma? Last night, watching you walk into that garden with your head held high, refusing to be excluded. That's the woman I want to be. Strong. Dignified. Not letting anyone make her feel small. I hugged her tight. You're already that woman, Emma. You just needed a reminder. The following weeks were interesting. Emma and Michael went on their honeymoon. Richard called me once, stiffly thanking me for the use of the venue, and asking what I charged for the event. I told him the price, the full price, no family discount, and he paid it without argument. Jennifer didn't call. Didn't text. Nothing. Ethan came to visit as promised. We spent an afternoon together and he told me about his life, his girlfriend, his job. I've always been kind of intimidated by Mom, he admitted. The way she has expectations for everything, the way she judges people. But watching you at the wedding, seeing you just be yourself despite her trying to exclude you, it made me realize I've been letting her control too much of my life. What are you going to do about it? I'm moving out. Getting my own place. Mom wants me to stay at home until I'm married, says it's more practical financially. But I'm 23 years old. It's time. Good for you, Ethan. Michael's father followed through on his offer, and I ended up consulting on his property development project. It led to other opportunities, other connections. My little property management business began to grow in ways I hadn't anticipated. Emma returned from her honeymoon and we had that dinner, just the two of us. She asked me questions about my life, really listening to the answers for the first time in years. I told her about building my business, about the challenges and triumphs, about the satisfaction of creating something from nothing. Why didn't you ever tell us? She asked. About your success, your business? I tried sometimes, but your mother would change the subject, or she'd make some dismissive comment about it being small time, or nothing like Richard's work. After a while I stopped trying. She was jealous, Emma said slowly. All this time she was jealous of you. Maybe. Or maybe she just needed me to stay in the box she built for me. The struggling single mother who needed her daughter's pity and charity. When I didn't fit that narrative anymore, she didn't know what to do with me. 3 months after the wedding, Jennifer finally called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Mother, she said, her voice stiff and formal. Jennifer. There was a long pause. I've been talking to my therapist about the wedding situation. I waited. She says I owe you an apology. And what do you think? Another pause. I think I've been treating you badly for a long time. Not just about the wedding. Before that too. I was embarrassed by you and that was wrong. Why were you embarrassed, Jennifer? Because you weren't like the other mothers. You worked in property management, you didn't have a college degree, you didn't know the right people or say the right things. You were a reminder of where I came from, and I wanted to forget that. I wanted to be someone different, someone better. And now I'm realizing that I'm not better. I'm just different, and maybe not even in a good way. Emma barely talks to me anymore. She's close with you, visits you regularly, and she looks at me like she's disappointed. Ethan moved out and hardly calls. Richard says I've become too focused on appearances, too judgmental. Everyone at the wedding was talking about you. How elegant you were, how impressive your business is, how gracious you were despite how I treated you. And I realized that the embarrassment I was trying to avoid, I created myself. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, triumphant even. But mostly I just felt sad. Sad for all the years we'd lost. For the relationship we could have had if Jennifer hadn't been so determined to be ashamed of where she came from. What do you want from me, Jennifer? I don't know. Forgiveness, maybe? A chance to start over. Forgiveness, yes. I can do that. Starting over? That's harder. You've hurt me deeply, and not just about the wedding. For years you've made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I was something to be hidden away. I've forgiven you, but I won't forget that. And I won't put myself in a position to be treated that way again. What does that mean? It means we can have a relationship, but it's going to be on different terms. You're going to treat me with respect. You're going to acknowledge my worth and my accomplishments. And if you can't do that, if you start falling back into old patterns of dismissiveness or condescension, I will walk away. I love you because you're my daughter, but I like myself too much now to accept poor treatment. There was silence on the line. Then quietly, that's fair. That's more than fair. We talked for a little while longer, carefully feeling our way through this new dynamic. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't solved in one conversation. But it was a start. That was 8 months ago. Jennifer and I are still rebuilding our relationship. Slow going, and sometimes we backslide. She'll make a comment that sounds too much like the old dismissiveness, and I'll have to call her on it. But she's trying, genuinely trying, and I respect that. Emma and I are closer than ever. She brings Michael over for dinner regularly, and we've started a tradition of Sunday morning coffee at my house. She's pregnant now, expecting my first great-grandchild, and she's already asked me to be involved in every aspect of the baby's life. Ethan has his own apartment and a serious girlfriend who he's brought by to meet me several times. He's more confident now, more his own person, not living under Jennifer's shadow of expectations. My business has grown significantly. The consulting work for Michael's father led to more projects, more connections. I've purchased 2 more properties and have plans to expand my venue business. Last month, a lifestyle magazine did a feature on me, the grandmother who built a business empire. Jennifer called after it came out and said quietly, "I'm proud of you, Mom." As for the Riverside Grand Estate, it's still the most sought-after wedding venue in the region. We're booked solid for the next 2 years. And every time I walk through those elegant rooms or stand in that beautiful garden, I remember the night I stood up for myself. The night I refused to be erased. The night I borrowed back my own venue and changed my family dynamics forever. People sometimes ask me if I regret how I handled the situation with Emma's wedding. They suggest I could have been more diplomatic, could have avoided the confrontation, could have quietly attended without making waves. But I don't regret it. Not for a second. Because that night, I taught everyone in my family an important lesson. I taught them that I have value and I deserve respect. I taught Emma that standing up for yourself isn't about being vindictive or cruel. It's about knowing your worth and refusing to be diminished. I taught Jennifer that actions have consequences, and that people won't always stay in the boxes we try to put them in. Most importantly, I taught myself that it's never too late to reclaim your power. At 73 years old, after decades of being dismissed and overlooked, I finally found my voice. I finally stood up and said, I matter. And I did it by borrowing my own venue, showing up to a wedding I was supposedly too embarrassing to attend, and proving that I was every bit as sophisticated, capable, and worthy as anyone there. They said, "Stay away from our wedding." I borrowed their venue and showed up anyway. And in doing so, I changed everything. Not just for them, but for myself. I'm Helen Morrison. I'm 73 years old. I'm a successful businesswoman, a property owner, a grandmother, and a great-grandmother-to-be. I'm strong, I'm dignified, and I'm done being treated as less than I am. And it all started because I refused to miss my granddaughter's wedding.